Welcome back, everyone. I'm Ed Harold, and you're watching my Life with Breath Expert Series, Applying Breath as Medicine. Well, today I'm joined by the amazing Rick DellaRatta, and he has a nickname at Snowbird called the Jazz Man. And I just thought I just want to share Rick with us today. So, Rick, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here, Ed.
Rick, could you play a little something for us just to get us in the flavor of what jazz is all about?
Sure, I'll do that. You mentioned that, everyone, that name that everyone was calling me. And last year when I got back from skiing, I had to be on a podcast down in, it was in a recording studio down in Soho, which is kind of a hip section in New York City. And the guy's like, what are you going to play? I said, I don't know, but like, maybe I'll just play the song Jazz Man since, blah, blah, blah. So I'll just do it now. And actually, this jacket comes from Snowbird. It's Walter's. I don't even remember Walter Clement.
Yeah.
It's his jacket. I'll play a little of this tune, Jazz Man. Going to be kind of my own little version of it. And in the middle, it goes into a kind of a free thing, which I kind of call free JA, which is just a little kind of it just opens up a little bit. So you'll see what I mean when I get into it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
When the jazz man's testified, a faithless man believes he can bring you into paradise or bring you to your knees. It's a gospel kind of feeling, touch of Georgia slide, a song of pure revival in the style that's sanctified. Jazz man, take my blues away, make my pain the same as yours with every change of play. Oh, jazz man, jazz man. Lift me, won't you lift me with every turn around? Play it sweetly, take me down. Oh, jazz man.
Thank you so much for that. I remember that song when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah, 1970s or whatever. I was surprised because I had never heard a pop song about a jazz man, and I'd never heard that before in pop music. My whole life. I mean, you heard your Beatles songs about, I want to hold your hand and breakups and this, that, and the other. You give love a bad name or whatever, and all that stuff. But this was a song about a jazz man written by Carole King, who's from. She lives over in the state next door, over by Ketchum or whatever that is, Sun Valley.
Interesting. Interesting. So you've got a rich background. You do a lot of things. You're involved in a lot of stuff trying to help people. Can you give us a little flavor about, what you're involved in when you're not skiing?
Sure. So, I had learned some basic things that were kind of ingrained in me from being a musician all my life, just traveling around with all different kinds of bands. I played with, I mean, you name it, from big bands like the Artie Shaw Orchestra, traveling around in a bus all over the United States, playing in the Caribbean with this band, the Platters, that was famous in the 1950s or whatever, playing in jazz clubs as an opening act and MC for Dizzy Gillespie, and just, a wide variety of just as amazing experiences, but with bands, you may have never heard of, or maybe underground jazz guys would know who they are. They would know who they are, but, the average Joe might not know, and all that. But through all of that, and then came my original, my CDs, where I started to travel with those, playing my own music. By the time we got to the new millennium, it was obvious to me that there was a big difference between the arts and culture world, where we were connecting with people on a very special way, and cutting through all kinds of barriers and reaching people of all shapes and sizes, creed, color, language, religion, you name it. We were able to touch people's hearts, and the rest of the world that was disconnected and getting more disconnected, with all kinds of barriers getting in the way to fragment people and just keep people apart and keep people, in disarray. So when 9/11 came and I happened to watch it from the roof of my building in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, less than a quarter of a mile away, watching the events of 9/11, because I'd been woken up by a photographer that had been taking my picture the day before, and she had a job on Wall Street. She called me up. She's like, all frazzled. She said, I didn't know who to call, but we spent the day yesterday, and I don't know. I said, let me go up on the roof and see what's going on. So anyway, when that happened, I had a response. I mean, a lot of people didn't know. I wouldn't have had a response normally, but on this day I had a response, and that was just words that came out that I wrote down on a piece of paper as they just came out of me. If you ever read interviews of guys who write songs or composers, Beethoven apparently spent months, maybe years, just to get da, 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 But these words just came flowing out. I couldn't stop them. And I thought I better just write them down because they're coming out anyway. It was almost like a giving a birth. And so at the end of 9/11, I had a poem. And, that poem just led to a situation where I felt like, if I'm ever going to walk the walk and do what it is that I know, nobody knows better than me that this is that this is a way forward. Now's the time to try to live up to these words. Maybe at least try for a couple of days, a week. So I'm like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and try to live up to the words of this poem. And that's what's been going every day, because every day I'm like, man, I have another chance to live up to the words of this poem, which has been bringing me, rewards by the fact that it helps others and makes a difference in others' lives. So I get this kind of boomerang situation, so I'm like, hey, it's another day to try to live up to the words of a poem. And that's where the whole journey's been. And it's been, a wild, spectacular journey. I mean, take months to just to tell you about it, but I can, any specifics I could tell you, like a certain country, a certain this, a certain that, whatever you wanted to know, I could certainly answer.
Well, we seem to be at a time where folks are stressed out. Mental health issues are arising everywhere. Folks
Right.
are really thin-skinned emotionally in regard to maybe being corrected or criticized. Where does music, specifically jazz, play a role in humans' mental health?
Well, when I wrote the poem, one of the very first things that happened after I recited the poem at the Savannah Jazz Festival, which was in front of like 8,500 people, I've been joking lately that poor Edgar Allan Poe probably never had a chance to say one of his poems in front of 8,500 people. And here I was, on a stage because I was the headliner at this festival reading a poem, and I'd only written one poem, really. I mean, I was a lyricist, but, here I am with my first poem in front of 8,500 people. So, but anyway, after I read the poem, there was an article. I mean, someone called me up for my next concert, heard about the poem, and he was writing an article on me, and he was tape recording it unbeknownst to me. And just in interviewing me, I just happened to say off the top of my head, if we would fill our souls up with creativity, with artistry, with humanity, all of these qualities that we have, our greatest qualities as a species, and that we're all aware of, if we were to fill our souls up with those greatest qualities, we would have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. I wouldn't have even remembered it if it hadn't come out in his article. Well, it comes out in his article, and that gets lifted by these, I didn't even know they existed. They're famous quotes websites, and now you could type in Rick DellaRatta famous quote, and you'll see that quote, which is probably more, it's way more famous than the poem, actually. But it's a famous quote. But anyway, getting back to what you said with mental health, a lot of it has to do with very simply us getting caught in all of the noise instead of staying on track of what we know is right. I mean, we know deep down inside. And so, I look at people and I say, darn, that poor guy, if he only had a piano, the person suffering with an addiction or whatever, or if he only had, something, the equivalent of what a piano is for me, because it gives me that chance. And just like skiing with us, that time out, these kinds of little things, meditation, focusing on your breath, like you're talking about, that's the same kind of thing that will happen to me when I'm just by myself and I'm in a meditative space, practicing really slow. These kinds of little things, they go all the way back to the Ming Dynasty, wherever Tai Chi comes from, all these kinds of things. But then it all circles back to the quote, are we filling our souls up with these kinds of things? And if we're doing that, we're actually buffering these other forces that could really drive us crazy. Because without the piano and without the mountain, who the heck knows where I'd be mentally? So I feel for these people that are having these issues. I really do.
Well, out of all the different genres we have out there, my own personal experience is when I listen to American jazz, I find it deeply relaxing, a lot more than other genres. Is there any reason why our nervous system is forced to relax with classic American jazz more than other, like say rock and roll?
Well, a lot of people started asking me when I started Jazz for Peace. They said, hey, well, why jazz? Why not, country for peace, rock for peace? Well, the art form of jazz does have all of those things in it. You know what I mean? I was playing all kinds of music, and I was playing in a lot of places where, no bones about it, I was selling alcoholic beverages, really. The manager, they'd look at, man, this guy's really good, when they're carrying a big tray of shots that just got ordered. You know what I mean? By a person who's probably gonna miss to be late for work the next day because of it. You know what I mean? But all of a sudden I'm really good, So the art form of jazz does have these qualities. You find creativity, you find individuality, you find artistry, you find, things like humanity. All these greatest qualities are embodied in the art form of jazz. So I see how jazz could have, a healing aspect, certainly on the performers, but also on the listeners. It can have a relaxing, soothing, all these different, there's all kinds of different quality emotions that can come from the jazz experience. And of course, the listener has the opportunity to explore, and there's a learning curve in some of it. So some of it, I mean, I used to take jazz out of the library when I was a kid, and man, I was like, whoa, I didn't get that, what I just listened to, but I'm going to give it another try, and so that you find people grow, it grows, you can grow with it, and it can grow with you.
Well, I noticed when you were playing the piano that you were in my opinion was you were embodying the technical skill sets of playing the keys, and your ear was tuned in deeply to what you were listening to, and your body was somewhat rhythmic with the melody and the harmonics. I mean, how does one pick up these skills?
There's kind of two aspects of it. One, they were always with me, because when I first started playing the piano, I was really just a 6-year-old kid, kind of standing up and playing like this, and I was trying to figure it out on my own. And that figure it out on your own never left me. But then you have the trained part. And so that I saw value in that. And then studying all these greats from the past, and, channeling Chopin or something, sitting down with a amazing Chopin prelude and be like, wow, I'm in the 1800s. I can feel this man, and I couldn't do that out in the soccer field with my friends. As much as I love soccer, it wasn't taking me to the 1800s like this deal is. So, it's just it has a special quality to it. Oh, so what it is what I'm doing now, some of my explorations, I'm almost like trying to find some notes from the underground. So I'm almost in a way trying to do what Dostoevsky did in a book musically on a keyboard. Certain times when I'm improvising, I'm looking for these kind of special notes that are kind of magically right. I don't know how to explain it to you, but it's like, sometimes I listen, I'm like, I can't even believe, how did I get here? How did I get here? But I'm here. I don't know. Somehow I got here. And to me, I feel like I'm excavating notes from the underground. That's that's just a kind of little thing that I feel like I have an interest in, and it does relate to Dostoevsky, because I mean, there's a guy who did some amazing things, a lot of them from a concentration camp in Siberia,
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got millionaires and billionaires that can't solve all world's problems now, and people still revert back to people like him, who had nothing.
It's really interesting. Everything in our brain takes place in time sequences based on our habits of yesterday and the day before that. And then there's today, and there's going to be tomorrow. And, you can take a photograph and you can stop time, and you can look at that picture at any time in the rest of your life, and your brain will immediately go back to that picture. When I listen to jazz, it's almost as if I transcend time, and there is no time restrictions. And I'm almost an open channel that goes all the way back to the first notes that have ever been played into the next notes that are going to be played 500 years from now. How does the jazz affect our nervous system and our brain's perception of time?
Well, here's the thing about jazz is it does have this historical lineage that you're hearkening to. And the jazz artist has the opportunity to refer to that lineage. So sometimes I'll find myself in the middle of a very contemporary solo quoting a melody from Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, you just never know. So we have all of that to draw from. And part of the Jazz for Peace poem kind of states that, it kind of pays homage to all of these people who laid the foundation for us to build on. And that's a foundation. It's kind of a giant ocean of contribution, and we can draw from it. And by drawing from it in our own unique way, we get to add our own drop into the ocean with all the other drops, if we're lucky. And that's like the greatest privilege of all, to be able to even try to add my own little drop, paying homage to all of that came before and all that I have to draw from. Now, with that said, there's a lot of different ways to play jazz. I mean, there are some things where there are some types of jazz where you hear people barely improvising or just improvising in a certain way, a certain, within that specific time period. So you have that kind of stuff, then you have people improvising using any time period, but within a form. And then, you can even go to a part where you'll have someone improvising without any form, completely freely. And what I sometimes do, where I will draw from anything, and that could be jazz, it could be rhythms from Brazil or Africa, it could be harmonies from Europe, it could be classical techniques from the US, from Schoenberg to Aaron Copland.
Are you, at someone at your skill level, are you playing the piano or is the piano playing you?
Well, what I like to do ultimately when I'm, during the improvisation, when I'm soloing, is I like to really just allow. So all I'm trying to do really is just allow. That's it. I don't have to really concentrate on technique or concentrate on anything. And you kind of want to throw everything out the window and just allow the music to come through you. So, if I was to make something up out of the blue, it could be anything. It might not even sound like jazz that you've ever heard before. Who knows? But what I would be doing, if I'm doing what I want to do, is just allowing the moment and allowing whatever comes through from wherever it comes. It could come from an experience I had in Kathmandu, Nepal, or it could have something to do with the wildfires burning out here in New York, that have been swooping in from Canada. It could have anything. Crazy. It could have to do with you, or even, your wife in the background somewhere. I mean, we just don't know.
I lead this meditation. It's a 5-word meditation. And you kind of go into your brain and you say to yourself, brain, we're only going to use 5 words. All other language we have forgotten temporarily. And it's a way of getting the mind and body in sync, so to speak. And it's the first word obviously is breathe. Okay. So you just say to yourself in your head, you say breathe. And as soon as you say breathe, your body knows what that means. And you begin to breathe. And the second word is relax. So when you say relax in your brain, your body again knows what relax means. And when you breathe and you add relax, that leads to feel, not think, but feel. So there's a physical process of breathe, relax, feel. And then the next word is to watch. So in your mind, you're not doing, you're watching the breathe, feel, relax. And the last word is allow. So that you're in the moment without clinging to the past with what has been successful or pushing away from what was in the past that might have been painful. And you're just allowing the moment to unfold curiously, like following wherever the energy wants to take you. This breathe, relax, feel, watch, allow. And when you mentioned the word allow, it immediately triggered me, because allowing is a mental process. It's an emotional process of trust that you're with the source. You're not being left out to dry, that something's going to come into this space and you can fill it with your skill set or your whatever you want to put in it. But allowing seems to be very difficult for folks in 2023. The stress levels are high, you can't sleep. Allowing means that you're trusting your life. You're trusting your skill sets. Something's going to come to me in my mind that I can't see right now. And when you think about, you're improvising on a solo, I mean, you must be allowing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things, right? The first one is allow, and the second one is context. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're allowing, but you're within a context. Now, the context could be anything. In the greatest sense, someone could say to me, "You know what, Rick? I want to hear you play." And there was a guy in Alberta doing this the other day. I want to hear you play something with no preconceived notions whatsoever. I just want to see what comes out, blah, blah, blah. Then he would say, I want you to play something for the turmoil that the world, So in other words, he's giving me a concept, even if no context, that's still a context, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or a specific context. Now, in the song I played, I was within the specific context of the song. So I was, I could have left the tempo, but I from what I remember, I kept the tempo, but I did leave the harmonics, I did, superimpose it. In other words, within that context, I allowed whatever was going to come through me within the context that was given. Just like if you guys are in a room in an ashram or something, you know what I mean? There's still a certain context, even if it's, just, whatever it is that you're doing. So those are the two words, allow, and then allow within the context. You're just allowing whatever happens within, but staying within the context that you're in.
Yeah. Well, allowing is a very naked form of knowledge because you're very exposed. You've kind of left safe harbor and you've decided to go out into the ocean and you can't see shore. And we're kind of vulnerable. And how can we harness that vulnerability in a way that's satisfying? So, I mean, people who trust their skill sets, regardless of good day, bad day, seem to have a much greater human experience than more like the robotic, 9 to 5 linear type of folk.
I had to learn a lot of times to just go into a sense of calmness because there was only one way forward, and that was to go into calmness. And I'd have to find it out a lot of times because with music, a lot of times I was at jam sessions and I'm just, in a new situation, all these new musicians, I don't even know who I don't know what song they're even going to call. I could be overwhelmed with the situation. Instead, I'm going deep into a point of calmness. In other words, you're doing the opposite of what might be the thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of doing what would be the normal thing and get completely stressed out, you're actually reversing the you know what I mean? You're reversing the paradigm. It's AC/DC kind of thing where you switch it. And because of that situation, you take that energy and you reverse it this direction into a level of calmness and into a level of within you. You know what I mean? Inside, into inner being and inner calmness. And it's really being caused by that energy that would cause you to go in the other direction. You're using that energy to power you into a calmness of which you're literally trusting the universe from that state. Because from that state, that's where you kind of can trust the universe. It's a weird thing.
Very counterintuitive. Interesting.
Yeah. I was asked to write. It was during ski season. This print article. These. I forgot what I think it's called, the Enterprise Zone. But anyway, it was either them or somebody else. They said, "Hey, we want to do a print article on you." I said, "All right. Well, what do you want to do?" They said, "We want to know the 5 things that make you happy." I didn't even know I was happy, but they said, "All right, I'll give it a try. What do you need me to do?" We want you to list the 5 things and just let us, give it to them. So I just took, find a blank that works for you 5 times, the same thing. And I'm going to just plug in what I think, those 5 things that I think. And the first one I put in was philosophy. And I was surprised myself. This was I probably learned more than anybody that reads it because I didn't know I was going to say these things. I didn't know what I was going to plug in there. I put, find a philosophy that works for you. And then I just put, and then I wrote a little paragraph about it. And I put, for me, find one that works for you. But for me, Stoicism, I was saying Stoicism is a philosophy that works for me. And I said, why? Then I said, find a, and I think the other ones were like, a hobby that works for you, an activity, something like that. I think the last one I said was, wait a minute, activity. Anyway, I said 5 things that work for me. And then when I look at that article, even today, I noticed, wow, somebody could just look at those 5 things and see if they're incorporating those in your day. Because you know what, if you just incorporate those things into your day, just make a note to incorporate those things, all of us right there, that lifts up your whole chi, your whole, you know what I mean?
Right.
That alone can lift up your whole general sense,
Interesting. I'm a firm believer that,
by the way, the last one was the last one was friendships and interactions. And I put because during the COVID thing, a lot of us got detached, a lot of us got isolated, and I said, so the 5th one I remembered was find friendships and interactions that work for you. So
so good for the brain. So good for the brain.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that we don't really, most folks' ear, they don't really understand the music that they're attracted to. They might like the words, or they might like the guitar player. But what I've found is that folks are attracted to music based on the drumming. And the drumming beat is the most earliest beat that we have. It goes way back into ancient times. Our heart has this sacred drum that's constantly resonating and beating. Now, I know in the piano, like you have 2 hands, and one hand is playing like a drum rhythm, and then I guess your opposite hand is doing your melodies or things like. Is there a relationship between piano and drumming and soloing?
Well, the piano is a percussive instrument, and and you can play a piano as a percussive instrument. A lot of people don't, but just because they don't doesn't mean the option isn't there. And I will utilize that option, especially if I'm playing solo. And I didn't before, because before I was like, hey, I love the interaction. I love to play with a bass player and a drummer, and I love the way we play off of each other. And I will utilize the drummer, I'll just get everything, all the juice I can out of the guy, because I'll just like play stuff that inspires him to do stuff, in the interplay. But, a lot of situations I would find, hey, you have a gig in Lahore, Pakistan, there's no jazz musicians there. It's just going to be me on the stage. So I started to imply. So I will imply the drums sometimes with what I do. I'll imply, the bass, or the bass in the drum. So I'll imply those rhythms. I'll be implying them. I'll imply time, and by implying it, you actually feel like there's some sense of time going on, even though there's no drummer in the room. So that's what I do.
That's amazing. I never thought of the piano that way.
Yeah. Well, and so it opens me up really to do things that, it just gives me some very interesting options, because, otherwise it would sound like, boy, that piano player, poor guy, he doesn't have his drummer. You know what I mean?
Right.
So rather than by implying it, they don't notice that the drummer's missing even.
That's unbelievable. So, lately I've been listening to some Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Wayne Shorter and just some of these American legends. And it's remarkable to me how different they all are. Like the pace, the exploration, the structure, and then there's no structure. It's incredible how you take this technical skill that you've cultivated from years out in the woodshed of just trying to figure something out, ascending, descending scales, whatever it may be, melodies, harmonies. But then you have this amazing ear where you not only do you hear yourself, but you might hear the other fellas just as much as yourself. And it's an art form, this listening.
Right. Well, okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, sent me their book that they're selling on Amazon, teaching book, and they wanted me to just give a little review for their teaching book. And I opened up to a certain page where the person talked about listening, and I just said, the three most important words. I said, this teacher nailed the three most important words in jazz, the three most important words. And I said, listen, listen, and listen.
Right.
And the book sold a whole bunch of copies right after the review came out. But that's how I felt about it. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much important listening is. And that's in your development too, because even though you're studying formally, the way that you're going to learn that other way is all by ear. Your ear plays a phenomenal part in the process. And that's why when I imply things, and I'm telling you, I apply them, sometimes I will literally imply the drumming, not of just a drummer, but maybe of, the drummer who played on Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, who I've played with personally many times. He's played on some of my records, that specific drummer, and I know how he plays. So I'll imply his time. I'll imply it while I'm improvising. Or, a drummer that I know who played with Stan Getz and, Austria Gilberto, who just passed away. Whatever, I'll even imply, so not even implying the drums, but even the specific drummer and the unique way that he played. And back then, when we're talking about, all those guys played unique. They all had their own sound. It's only now, with so many people studying music, that you hear musicians who they don't sound like themselves, but they sound like four other jazz greats, four different jazz greats. This guy sounds like these four, that one sounds like that four. But those guys you're mentioning, they all sound unique.
The other day I was listening to Bitches Brew, and I was listening to Pharaoh's Dance, the first song, and I was listening to that drummer intently, and I had no idea where he was going as the song unfolded. There was no rhythm, in the sense that it was like a pocket of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. This guy was doing things. I almost drove off the road because I've never zeroed in and heard something as free. And then it all made perfect sense with the other musicians, but I didn't know where the drummer was going, because it wasn't that traditional drumming in a pocket, in like a box, in like a computer, just boo, 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 boo. He was doing stuff that I've never heard before. This guy was super talented.
Well, that drummer was that drummer, as far as I know, I'm just double checking, but wait a minute. Miles Davis Pharaoh's Dance. Okay, so I believe the drummer on that specific one was Jack DeJohnette. Now, Lenny White also played drums on Bitches Brew, and Lenny White is the person who played drums on my second CD, which was called Thought Provoking. And then he played on the very first Jazz for Peace concert, and he also played on the Jazz for Peace CD. But Jack DeJohnette also played drums, and I believe he played drums on that specific song, Pharaoh's Dance. But you have to realize something. There was a percussionist on that as well, and that percussionist was Don Elias. And interestingly enough, the last time I played in New York, Don Elias passed away, but his wife came to the gig, and she gave me his book, his autobiographical book. And she, wanted to tell me how much she loves my playing and this, that, and the other. So it was kind of fascinating. And so, I got to know her pretty well. But so you're actually hearing drums and percussion. But like I said, those guys all had a very unique flavor. There was a special way that Jack DeJohnette approached the drums, and a whole different way that Lenny White approached the drums. And then when you add a drummer like Don Elias, who actually played with all kinds of people, including Joni Mitchell, Herbie Hancock. I mean, it's unbelievable, the list of people he played with. Then you have a situation where I can see how, if you put those two guys together, they're going to take you on quite a journey with percussion and drums.
That's funny, because when I first became aware of Lenny White, I was listening to like Al Di Meola or Stanley Clarke,
right,
or Larry Carlton.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, that people like that are born. You could practice your whole life and never be that good? Like God gifted you with something rhythmically.
Well, it's interesting. When I was in high school, I used to listen to an album called Where Have I Known You Before? It was a Chick Corea album, and
Right.
Lenny White was the drummer, And I used to trick my friends into listening to it. So like we'd be out at the like we had a little pool in our backyard. And I would bring my friends over. We'd go swimming, jump off the diving board, and they would play their music, on the speakers, and I would sneak in just to see what they would do. I would play Return to Forever with Lenny White on drums, and Al
Right.
Di Meola, like you said, Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea. I'd play that record, and just to see, because I wanted to see if I could get these guys interested in that. And one of the other people I listened to back then was I listened to two others, McCoy Tyner and Keith Jarrett. And little did I know that I would actually be playing with musicians who were on those records that I listened to when I was in high school, after I got out of college and came to New York City. So I ended up playing, there was a percussion player. Actually, I did this thesis on an old piano player named Art Tatum. And a friend of mine who was a little bit of a wise guy, he got me this, I don't know if you know about upstate New York, but we'll talk sometime. Anyway, he got me this reporter's ID. And he goes, "Here, Rick, reporter ID. You're going to need it, to get in the clubs and interview the musicians." And here I was interested. So McCoy Tyner came to town, and he had this percussion player, Guillermo Franco. I couldn't get McCoy wouldn't come off the stage, but these guys were coming and going off the stage. So screw it, I'll interview him, So I interviewed this percussion player. And then there was this great Keith Jarrett record called Shades of Jazz that I loved. Same percussion player, Guillermo Franco. So, after I get out of school and I'm playing professionally, I'm in Japan and playing with this Brazilian bass player. And he says, "Hey, Ricky, when you go back tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going back. I got to go back." He says, "When you go back, my friend's going to call you, ask you to play in his band. He's one of my best friends. I told him about you." I said, "Okay, cool." He said, "Yeah, his name is Guillermo Franco." I said, "Well, Beto, there must be a lot of people with the name Guillermo Franco that play percussion." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because I know a percussion, but he plays with McCoy Tyner. He plays with, he's on Shades of Jazz with Keith Jarrett." He's, "No, that's him. He's going to call you." I said, "Yeah, okay. I'll hold my breath on that one." But anyway, I end up playing in his band, and then when my first CD, we're traveling all over playing in a Brazilian band, playing Brazilian music. And then when my first CD came out, which had done well, and I had the chance to just get anyone I wanted on my second CD, the bass player had given me the name of a couple of drummers that he liked to play with. Well, the bass player was Eddie Gomez, who's one of the top bass players really in the world ever, like in jazz history. And two of the names he gave me, one was Jack DeJohnette, the one I just told you. Another one was Lenny White. And I had their numbers. And then I had a number of another guy that he played with and I'm holding these guys' numbers, and another guy that he played with, Bill Evans, another drummer, Elliot Zigman. And then there was another drummer, Al Foster, that played with Miles and played with Sonny Rollins. And I had his number and he had my CD. And I'm like just sitting around what to do. The phone rings and I answer it and it's like, "Hi, this is Lenny White." And I'm like, I'm like Jackie Gleason, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I heard about this thing with you and Eddie, blah blah blah." I said, "Yeah, that's." I just, yeah, it's happened. That day, this time, it's just done. It's like, man, what am I gonna say? The guy just called me on the phone. I'm not just gonna juggle anything, So anyway, yeah, strange stuff. But that's the wild thing about the journey,
Well, when you mention a guy like McCoy Tyner, and I guess he courted for Coltrane.
Yes, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Could you play a little bit, just kind of showing us like what McCoy Tyner, who's an American treasure,
right?
Like what was he doing to set up Coltrane for those solos?
Okay, now just to tell you something funny, and I don't know if this is AI generated or what, but there is this crazy thing online. It's called Celebrityopedia or something like that. It's a pedia, but with another thing in front of it, you know? And they have a page of me. And on the page, it says, and it's got to be generated, computer generated. It just says these things that are wild. And when it said parents, it says, it lists my parents as John and Alice Coltrane. That's who it lists my parents. It's the funniest thing. So I don't even know if it's online. It could still be. I took it and just, you know, like, what do you call that? Archived it. And I put it in our articles thing, just, you know, in case somebody just wants to absolutely go into hysterics.
Right.
I mean, and listen to me too. My net worth was way, you know, crazy. You know my net worth. I mean, not like this, you know. Yeah, it's, you know, I'd never be a ski bum if I had the net worth that they listed. But anyway, so yeah, this is going to be kind of a thing because my left hand now is a lot in the McCoy world, whereas my right hand is more in the Coltrane world, you know. So it's almost like I'm almost like split down the middle here. But I'll try to do something that, you know, reminds me of them.
Thank you. My man. That was so amazing. The only place I could hear that music was in my heart. I couldn't hear it in my head. I couldn't hear it in my belly. It wouldn't escape my heart's chamber. It was so
Wow.
amazing.
That's an incredible perspective that you just gave. That's incredible. Now, see, only you could, because you're so in touch with that your whole thing. You're so in touch with that. That's amazing that you're able to tell me, that what you just said. I mean, that's so cool. That's really cool.
So I obviously have no idea. I'm a lay person. I have no idea what you were doing there, but it sounded like there was some ascending, chording, and descending. Uh, is there like a script to that, like in regard to emotion or theory, like, or is it just something that's just coming out of you? Because it's very emotional. It's like I'm at a Broadway show and I'm in the front row.
You know what? I'll tell you what happened. Okay, when I started to play, even though I had the context of McCoy and Coltrane stuff, things were coming. I sensed like what do you call it? I sensed something flowing. Some kind of energy was flowing through me. I sensed an energy flowing through me, and it was related to this moment. It was related to our discussion. It was related to now, and it was flowing through me, and I had to let that take over. So what you heard really had in the beginning had nothing to do. It was just me letting that emotion take over and letting those energies go. So they were just going, and eventually I was able to let the whole thing settle into some reminiscences of McCoy and that amazing quartet with Train and Elvin Jones was just unbelievable on the drums with them. Jimmy Garrison, whatever. But that what happened, I had to allow energies to just come through, and that's probably why you were feeling it in the heart, because it was all just coming through emotionally, just coming through me and out. And so I don't know what it was. I don't know where it was going. And when you say it's going up, it's going down, it's doing this, it's doing that, that's from the collective training of the 60, the half of the more than half a century plus years of training that led to this moment. You know what I mean? So whatever I did, whatever I lived, the time I spent practicing, the classical music I played, the funk band I played in high school, who knows? All of that led to this moment. All of that practice led to now. And then whatever came out was just, in other words, it wasn't something, it just came. In other words, it's in me. It could come out at any moment, but I don't know which moment it's going to be and what it's going to be that comes out. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to have no tempo at all. I don't know if it's going to be an odd time signature. I don't know if it's going to be an odd time signature within an even. I just don't know, And so that's what happened. It just kind of came out, and then it eventually settled into something within the context of the framework that we started out in.
Well, what's up with the layering? Like there's a layer process that you're putting out in these octaves or notes or what the phrasing, but it's very layered and textured to even like a layman's ear.
One thing I'll say is that there is pantonality involved in what I do. And this goes back to a discussion at the New England Conservatory of Music with a kind of a guru kind of guy. This is a discussion with a man who ended up hooking me up with the London Symphony Orchestra and Abbey Road Studios in England.
Way.
Yeah, wild situation. His name was William Thomas McKinley. He was, really a wonderkind musical guy. And he was big into composing. He was a major composer. And he ended up starting a record label called Master Musicians Collective. And what an idea this man had. And one day he contacts me and he's like, hey, man, I want to get you on the label. I've got this thing coming up with the Bavarian something or other, the Bavarian Symphony out in the middle of Prague. I got this over here and this over here. And I got the London. And I said, did you say the London? London what? like London Symphony
Right.
Orchestra. And I said, whoa, you telling me I could get on that thing? I said, yeah, but I had to fit into all these parameters. Anyway, I'm in a room with that man. So I'm in a room with him and a bunch of other brains. Okay. And these are like 5 or 6 other people. Anyway, everyone in the room, I think it was a class of people, but there was a bunch of brainiacs in this room talking about the future of music, where music is going to go forward. And we all basically came to the conclusion that pantonality was going to play a major role in taking the art form forward, taking the art form of jazz and American music. And so as I continued with what I was doing, I realized, this whole idea of just tonality is too, you know what I mean? It's too boxed in. Then you have your atonality with like these guys, Schoenberg and these, Stravinsky did a little bit of it. Some of these guys doing atonality, and that's a world here. But in pantonality, where you're literally superimposing tonalities over and against each other, that kind of is a middle section which can draw from both of those, and then it has its own kind of exploration. And that's kind of where I'm in terms of my little flavor of taking American music, jazz, and just music in general forward, is through something called pantonality. And so what you might be hearing is a layering of tonalities over and against each other, on top of each other, beneath, it's a wild thing. And I kind of feel like it almost makes me feel like a higher power has made me the flavor of the month when I really hit something interesting, So it's I feel blessed, maybe somebody up there chose this to come through me, because but that's what I think you're hearing, and that's where it comes from. Really, that discussion resonated with me, where I was like, I think so too. Pantonality is gonna play a role in bringing all of these different styles together.
Very, very cool and well explained. It's been great speaking with you over the last hour. Usually we don't get a chance to talk. We're on the tram, and I'll whisper over to you, Silver Fox, have you been in?
Right.
Or North Chute, it's open.
Right.
So like we're all secretive about where we're going in our grand plan up there on the bird every day. But when people want to get involved with what you're doing, the Jazz for Peace, and gosh, you've got so many organizations going, Rick. Your heart's in so many different places. You're an amazing human being. How can people get a hold of you if they want to help what you're doing?
Well, a great thing that I always tell them is, watch a podcast like this one, enjoy yourself, listen, enjoy the discussion, enjoy the music, and then just send a little email to Jazz for, to our just generic email address. It's info@jazzforpeace.org, 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 and make a comment that comes from your heart. Like you were saying, you were feeling the music in your heart. That's all we do. We take a comment that comes from someone's heart, and we use it as an entry place for them and Jazz for Peace. There's an entry level for you with that comment. If you're an outstanding cause, we can take the comment, believe it or not, and turn it into funds. We can literally turn it into funding for you through something called an empowerment tree. And that's a tree with branches on it that has basically, it's structured just like a tree, growing your fan base and donor base, thanking and rewarding the current, friends and fans that you have, is the roots of the tree. And then once we do that, we have a confirmed event, and we grow these branches, which are, sponsors, publicity and awareness, new and prestigious supporters, all different types of fun, all these different branches. And, it could be a person who knows an outstanding cause or has a project or is affiliated with a project. It could be any kind of things. It could be just someone who, hey, I want Jazz for Peace to come to my city and I want to be a guest of honor at the event. Or if you're just playing a generic gig, could be anything. But anyway, that's the best way. But there's other ways too, such as our website. Our website is just www.jazzforpeace.org. Of course, there's rickdellarata.com if you just want to see all the stuff that I've done. A lot of stuff that before Jazz Pianist I just left on there because so people could see what it was I was doing, you know, before 9/11 hit. And then some people just want to go on their own journey. You can type Rick DellaRatta famous quote, like I said, and that famous quote will come up, and that'll take you, who the heck knows? I don't even know where. Every time I do that, I find stuff that I didn't, you know, is new, or I didn't even know what was on there. So, you know, however you do it, get in touch with me and let me know where you're at. Like, you know, how do you know who I am? Did you watch a podcast? Did you? And we just go from there.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's great being with you. We just came out of a 100-year winter up in Little Cottonwood Canyon, and our souls are so filled with happiness. And knowing that you're out there trying to lift up humanity one note at a time makes my heart so full. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I look forward to connecting with you soon, buddy.
Thank you. And thank you so much for the great start to the year. Your friendship and everybody out there has given me. I owe whatever I get for between now and the end of the year. I really owe it to the boost that you guys gave me out on that mountain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.